Welcome, everyone. Good to see everyone again, and I'm absolutely delighted to speak with Anoop here, who's had a very deep experience in networking and security over a long period of time. Anoop spent 6 years in the blockchain space, so he's been in it since 2014 and 2015 from a corporate perspective. So he's done quite a bit at Cisco, now at AWS, but also pioneered the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance back in the day as well. So welcome, Anoop. Delighted that you're here with us. Maybe you can spend just a few minutes discussing some of your experiences at Cisco, AWS, and how you think about the future of blockchain and decentralized protocols going forward.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Colin, and thanks for having us. Thanks for inviting us to the event. I'm really excited to, kind of always support the community and the ecosystem that is around this whole space. So a little bit about me. I'm the global segment leader for blockchain here at AWS, which is just a fancy way of saying that I'm kind of responsible for, setting the strategy. How do we execute, and then working with the broader ecosystem to make sure that we've got partners and solutions and technology that we can bring to market together. Right. So it's very much, as we know in the blockchain space, an ecosystem play, and being able to do that in a holistic way is one of our goals. And really, if I look at my journey over the course of the last couple of years in the blockchain space, it's really been about, how do we help grow the total addressable market? I still believe firmly that we're in like the first inning, the first half of the first inning in this space. And there's a lot of innovation to come and a lot of exciting times to come as well. And so, we look at the blockchain space as being driven by the ecosystem, right? And for us, it's really important to really put in place mechanisms and guidance that allows others and folks like yourselves to work with us really simply and easily. So it's about partnership. It's about creating momentum, creating that drive in the industry, and basically creating an environment where there's growth opportunity for everyone. So partnering is a strategic decision that we've made in how we help grow the blockchain space. So that's just a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Given how long you've spent in the space, I'd love to start off by asking you, help our audience understand the trends in cloud storage, and maybe zoom out to like the next 5 or 10 years, how cloud storage is going to evolve and how decentralization might play a role in that.
Well, I mean, for us, for AWS, it all started, back in March of 2006 when we launched, S3 as our first service, right? The simple storage service, right? And so, we've seen significant evolution in the area of storage since then, and we've seen a lot of underlying technology evolve, right? We went from spinning disk to solid state, right? And I think what we're going to see over the next few years is completely radically new storage architectures. Not just, the storage mechanisms and the file systems themselves, but, the underlying, silicon design, the controller designs. I think these are all going to evolve. And, as was said in the opening with 175 zettabytes of data. I think with the blockchain space, we're going to see, kind of a Cambrian explosion on data and storage. And it's not just for the sake of, storing information. It's about, smart objects, smart data, and how do we kind of programatize and make available a much more dynamic data operating environment. And so, you have to have a storage thesis backing that. That's really important. And I think the notion of decentralized storage, while I do think it is early, I'll be honest, I think that is going to be a space that is going to be very exciting. We've got some really great protocols. IPFS is a great protocol. It's been around for a couple of years now. And I think what will drive kind of the next evolution in decentralized storage is going to be the user experience, right? So how do we replicate the kind of journey that we went through in, late 2000s, 2010 up to 2015 around the user experience for very fast access, high throughput data storage architectures that results in, almost zero latency when trying to stream video, right? As an example. And so I think we're not quite there yet. I think we're on that journey. And I think it's great time for folks to experiment with different designs, different architectures, different configurations of a mix of technologies to kind of hopefully optimize and identify, the right architectures to meet that kind of user experience.
Fantastic. It's so amazing to kind of zoom out at that level and see, a company like AWS really pioneer the cloud storage space, but also see well into the future where we're going to reach something like 200 zettabytes of storage and how that's going to evolve. Curious how, what impact do you think blockchain will have on kind of the full suite of like networking, compute, and storage infrastructure in the long run? And from your perspective personally, is there a world where like multiple blockchains and AWS could coexist?
Well, I would argue that that's the case today, right? We do know that there are a multitude of blockchain technologies, multiple blockchain protocols out there today. I would go so far as to say that there is so much opportunity that in fact none of these protocols are actually competing with one another just yet, right? Not in the truest sense, right? And so, what we see is a lot of different protocols that are born on AWS. They leverage our platform and our infrastructure, right, to get off the ground, establish themselves as one, credible technologies with communities around it, and then scaling from there, right? And so, today we have dozens, maybe hundreds of different blockchain networks, different blockchain technologies running on our platform. And to me, that just simply sends the signal that the pace of innovation and the model of innovation that we adopt here at AWS and largely, Amazon is well suited to the kind of innovation that needs to happen and is happening in the blockchain space. Right. And so again, I go back to our thesis, which is we're protocol and ledger agnostic. We frankly love them all. And we want them all to be successful. And we want for the markets to decide, how this community will evolve and be shaped down the road. And, again, like I can't stress more enough, like we are thinking of this from an ecosystem perspective and working with partners across the board in a number of industries and a number of verticals to make sure that there's a portfolio of options that are available, right, for customers who are going to go down, the blockchain journey. And it's not just enterprise focused. It's, how do we help support, those companies, organizations, institutions that choose to go down the public path as well? Because I think that's where, that fundamentally is where the future is. It's a question of readiness in the minds of some stakeholders. Like, are they actually ready to adopt a public mindset? But I think that is where the future is.
That's fantastic. I mean, it kind of goes back to some of the core principles of Amazon that, the customer voice comes first. And when you listen to that customer perspective and they're looking for different types of options, whether it be decentralized or different other protocols, it's great that, a company like Amazon or AWS really embraces all of those and takes the perspective that the markets should decide how some of that will play out and ultimately give those customers the choice there. So that's fantastic. You've been involved in the Enterprise Alliance for many, many years now, back, when Ethereum Enterprise Alliance kind of came into fruition. And so I'm curious, what are some of the top enterprise requirements that you've seen back then, how they evolved to today, and what do different protocols kind of need to, come to fruition to really meet some of those enterprise requirements?
Sure, and I'll go back to my time at Cisco, where I really started my journey in this space, and I was asking a pretty fundamental question, which was, what would the future of blockchain look like? Independent of the various nuanced protocols that were emerging at the time, but what would the future of blockchain look like if the fabric of the internet itself was blockchain enabled, right? If you now have switching and routing and communications infrastructure that could be self-organized, optimized for delivery of, blocks, optimized for the delivery of transaction data, hash data, right? What does that future look like? And that's when we started the journey of, how would we as a company consume this technology? Let alone build the technology. How would we consume it? And that's when we started the journey of really digging into the business of the organization, multiple facets of the organization, and really understand what the needs are. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, I helped start the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. That was a very interesting meeting and conversation in the hotel lobby in Shanghai at DevCon 2, where a bunch of us, we gathered around Vitalik and said, Enterprise Ethereum might be a thing. Let's go take a look at it. And kind of driving that motivation was that observation of what could we do as Cisco as a consumer of the technology? How would we use it? And recognizing that the ecosystem that Cisco as a company supports and is a part of is very dynamic. Right. There are folks coming into and out of it all the time, maybe almost on a daily basis. And so how do we define blockchain architectures that can persist with that kind of churn in the day-to-day business operating environment? And what do these organizations need in order to be able to meet the needs of Cisco and for Cisco to meet the needs of their customers? And confidentiality and privacy and security around all of that was tantamount. That was the number one thing that surfaced in every customer conversation, every partner conversation, and every vendor conversation. So how do we maintain confidentiality in an environment where there is a lot of data moving back and forth, right? And so we started looking at the idea of maybe data objects, data blobs need to be self-defending, right? So I'm a big believer in perimeterless operating environments, the idea that there are no more the classical four walls of an enterprise or an organization. You have to be able to defend at every layer within your business. And so smart data objects, I mean, that becomes interesting. Well, could that be a token-like model? Right? Could that be a NFT-like model, as we kind of call it today? But the idea that a data blob could be self-defending, and so the use case is, let's say if you're in a healthcare setting in a hospital, and you've got a patient record, right? And this was before kind of the conversation of zero knowledge proofs kind of surfaced, which was, we said, well, if you have a patient record that is its own self-contained data object, and an application is trying to access that data object, the data blob should be able to say, prove to me that you are an application that is authorized to be executing on this resource and that you're authorized to actually access this information. And the only response that the application should be able to give back is, well, here's my address on the ledger. And the data blob can then go back and independently verify, that yes, the provisioning and the deployment and the efficacy of this application is sound, and therefore I can now release information. So it's kind of ideas like this that we were kind of experimenting with.
Fantastic. So you mentioned obviously confidentiality, privacy, security. As the data economy evolves, two of the other properties or similar properties that we're really investing in as a Filecoin network is around data immutability and data integrity. And we think that's might be the kind of crux of long-term data preservation. And so, we have some unique, tech to enable that, like content identifiers and hashing and things like that. I'm curious to see, how you see those two properties play into the future of the data economy, and how you see that play out.
I think it's critical, because at the end of the day, a lot of the workflows that are going to exist, whether you're on the enterprise side of the blockchain equation or on the public side of the blockchain equation, is going to come down to efficacy, right? Is there efficacy in the data? And if there isn't, then how do you base a business decision on data that you don't really 100% trust, right? Or you don't really have the provenance of that data, or the provenance of the infrastructure that's supporting that data, right? So I look at these as kind of a very intricate web of proofs, if you will, right, that all lead to the efficacy of data. And of course, that is dependent on data integrity and data immutability.
Awesome. Zooming out, what do you think are going to be some of the more immediate use cases and verticals where you see early adoption of Web3 tech? You've seen a lot, I'm sure, so far. Curious what you think the next few years look like.
So I'm a big proponent of IoT. And I truly believe that blockchain technology as a sector is a major enabler of IoT. And so, I think what's going to be really interesting is that as we look at the oil and gas and the renewables space, just the whole energy sector is kind of poised for transformation. And the amount of data that exists in that industry is, astounding, right? But a lot of the operational data that could be used for provenance, could be used for building efficacy, is thrown away, right? Or is not accessible. Or there's an air gap because the protocol within not just the first mile, but the first few inches, is designed in such a way that it needs to be intrinsically safe, right? So, there are architectural decisions that need to be made over the next few years. And again, storage is going to be such a critical component of that equation, because if you can't prove the efficacy in how your carbon footprint strategy is going, then when you make a carbon footprint disclosure and you lack the genealogy and provenance information underneath it, well, did you really meet your target, right? And if you didn't really meet your target, does that now prevent you from getting access to additional working capital, right, from an investment perspective? So, these things are going to be dovetailed into one another over the next few years. I still think we're still trying to figure out, the foundational infrastructure, if you will. But I think the race is coming, where if you can actually prove, without a shadow of doubt, and unassailable, unassailable efficacy around data, you're going to be in a very good spot.
Totally. I mean, that's one thing we really share in terms of perspective, is that 95% of the world's data today does not get stored. And, some of that pie maybe doesn't deserve to be stored, but some of it, like the use cases that you just described, we just don't have the means or kind of the cost effectiveness or kind of the tech to store it in the right ways. And so that's kind of like the big prize, I think, that, most folks in the storage world are looking after.
And I would argue that these architectures have to scale up and scale down just as efficiently, right?
100%. Fantastic. Well, I'll give you the last word, Anoop. I know you're looking for partners in the space. We only have a few seconds left, but go ahead.
Yeah, we are, like I said, we're taking a a technology and protocol agnostic approach. We want partners. We want to grow the ecosystem. We want to help the ecosystem grow itself. And so that's our job number one.
Great. Thank you so much, Anoop. Really appreciate you being here. And I'll pass it back to Nolan here.